The deadline for players to enter the transfer portal and be eligible next season, it has passed. And some interesting names got in the portal in the past 48 hours. Kentucky's Keon Brooks, Florida's Keontae Johnson, Baylor's Matthew Meyer. We're going to get to those things in a bit, but I did want to start with a column you wrote heading into the weekend about the one-time transfer waiver and name, image, and likeness rights and the seismic change that those two things have brought to college athletics. It came to a head with the Isaiah Wong situation at Miami. You talked to a lot of people in the industry about this, including a lot of coaches. Just your broad takeaway from what you learned from those conversations.
The impetus for the column had been building for, I don't know, a week and a half, 2 weeks, just in talking to coaches, hearing from coaches, these people, calling me unprompted to kind of just, do what coaches do, which is to complain. They do a lot of things, but coaches, man, do these guys just love to complain in the offseason. And I'm willing to be a sounding board for that because, frankly, it helps inform things going around about the sport and understanding more of their grievances and sometimes non-grievances. But it was becoming ever clear that this issue of name, image, and likeness, players going into the portal, having immediate eligibility, having people represent these players, and having a situation where it wasn't companies finding players to pay them for their name, image, and likeness. It was players looking to transfer so that they could find someone to pay them a lot of money for their name, image, and likeness had become an issue that was consuming the coaching profession and still is consuming the coaching profession. In fact, after I wrote the column, I talked to Eric Musselman at Arkansas on Sunday, and he said I could use this on the record. He said, it's so outrageous that I spent more time on the phone with transfers than I did preparing for Gonzaga. And they wound up winning that game against Gonzaga in the Sweet 16. And I said, that can't be true. He's like, I'm telling you, I spent just as much time, if not more, talking to transfers, people finding me, than I did when I was trying to prepare my team to play Gonzaga, which is frankly outrageous. But as a head coach, you feel obligated because you just don't know. And at that, Arkansas is going in the second weekend. They obviously wound up winning that game, and they don't make it to the Final Four, but they make another good deep run in the tournament. So, but that there's a chance you might lose players. And even as we speak, JD Note left, Jalen Williams, he's 50-50. Will he return? Will he not return? So anyway, all this stuff was building up to this. And then the Isaiah Wong thing happens on Thursday night. We podcasted. So this is the first time we've talked to each other since the Wong story even broke. We last podcasted on Thursday morning. And what happened was a first. You had an agent for a player say, if we don't get more money, we're leaving, or we're at least going in the transfer portal, in addition to Isaiah Wong going through the pre-draft process. I thought it was actually a fairly significant moment in the history of college athletics, because this had never happened. This is the kind of thing that we're used to seeing every July with a star NFL player or six, or we hear, leaked out through, prominent media personalities, through NBA players and their agents, right? This has just not been something that happened at the college level. And so it was kind of the reason I read the column was Wong really prompted me to do it. I wanted to see if he was going to go through on going into the portal. He stared down a billionaire. And to be honest, both men kind of got what they wanted. Wong is not going to get more money from John Ruiz, this Miami booster, this billionaire, who already signed Wong to a deal. And then Nigel Pack came in and got more money after not doing a thing to help Miami make its first Elite Eight in school history. Wong's like, I want more. And then Ruiz, apparently, they patched things up. Wong's not going in the portal. He'll either return to Miami or he'll pursue a pro career. I would think returning to Miami is the much more likely scenario at this point. And he just, his threat to go into portal, it wilted away within 24 hours. So there's a ton in the column. I don't want to ramble too much here, but it just addresses this thing that's not surprising, but still, we really need to talk about, and that's the fundamental difference between guys that have earned their money through name, image, and likeness. Companies are finding them. They want to pay. Kansas players reaping rewards off of taking a title tour, GP, right around that stake. Oscar Tshiebwe is standing to become a millionaire playing college basketball, the likes of Hunter Dickinson. These kind of players where they're established, they're returning to their schools, they're getting paid because they actually have value. There's a difference between that. I had a coach and what else is happening? I mean, I had a coach call me on Sunday night, and I won't say which coach it is. He was in the NCAA tournament, and he said, he's not looking, they're not looking for pity. They're not looking for anyone to feel bad for these coaches. He's like, I get paid a ton. I'm just telling you, we made the tournament, and the last 3.5, 4 weeks of my life have been miserable because we haven't even stopped to reflect on what an awesome season it was because we're so caught up in trying to get these transfers. We're losing out on them. There are guys in the portal that are trying to transfer to my program that averaged, 12 minutes a game, asking how they can make $50,000 in name, image, and likeness. And what I told the coach, and he agreed, I was like, listen, I think every player deserves to get paid. No doubt about it. But if you average 11 minutes a game, and you're transferring to a school that's outside the top 30, the top 35, your name, image, and likeness carries almost no value. That's the reality of this situation. Now, if you want to have the conversation about these players should ultimately all get paid by the schools through a union, I think that's a conversation we're getting closer toward. And I think that would be a good thing. And maybe that's the thing that will help eliminate the situation we have right here, GP. But it's it's just amazing. I've never seen one issue dominate the coaching landscape the way this is right now. I mean, these guys are just, they're exhausted, they're freaked out. Again, no violins on this side, none, but it's just the reality of it. And you hear it from the football side as well. Jordan Addison, the USC, I say the USC wide receiver, he'll probably be that soon. He's not even technically in the portal yet. The Pitt wide receiver, who's the best wideout in college last year. There's just all this allegations of tampering, et cetera, et cetera. So it's a humongous deal, and it was worth writing about. And so I did just that.
I thought the Isaiah Wong situation was awesome and really noteworthy. Just to contrast it with where we were, say, even 10 years ago. Can you imagine 10 years ago a college basketball player's agent announcing on, through a media outlet that if his client doesn't get more name, image, and likeness rights money, he will enter the transfer portal by the deadline. I mean, the whole thing is wild to think about. And the reaction on Twitter was hilarious and unsurprising. Some people were really offended by this. And as I pointed out on Twitter, coaches have been telling schools for decades that if they don't get more of this or more of that, they are going to leave, which is the equivalent of what Isaiah Wong did. Now, John Ruiz called his bluff and then said, but I'll help you get some more over here. And so, everybody, Isaiah Wong's going to get more money than he was going to get, this time last week, I'm assuming, but it's not going to come from John Ruiz, who gets to say, I told you I don't renegotiate, and I don't. So don't try to, we reach a deal. That is the deal. We're not going back to it. So everybody gets to walk away from it saying, I accomplished what I wanted to accomplish. So good for the Miami community. But I'm just not going to be offended when players do in this space, when players do exactly what coaches do all the time, at least coaches with options. I remember a coach at some point over the past 10 years had a good job, but was offered what is, if you put both jobs on the table for an unemployed man, he would take this other job. So it was a better job, but the guy liked his job and he was waiting for an even bigger job. And I was talking to him while this was still going on. And I was like, are you going to would you take this? Can they throw enough money at you to get you to do it? And he said, no, I'm not going to take it. But what I am going to do is drag this thing out long enough so that I can get what I want from my current school. I want a bigger recruiting budget. I want more money for my assistants. I want more private planes. So I'm going to tell my school, if you don't give me these things, I'll go take this job. But if you give me these things, I'll stay here. And he got what he wanted, and he stayed there. How is that any different than what Isaiah Wong did last week? I mean, it's not. And so I this is the space we're now working in. And I have no issue with players taking advantage of that space and leveraging situations to try to get more compensation. You point out that we've got to figure out, what is the difference between somebody truly capitalizing on their name, image, and likeness, like Oscar Tshiebwe is about to do at Kentucky after becoming a Kentucky star, and somebody just pay for play. Hey, if you come here, we'll give you $800,000 and we'll call it name, image, and likeness. The issue, of course, is like I know what you mean, but there's no way to draw a line in between those things. There's no, in this space where we're currently operating, there is no way, unless you're just going to put together another committee and have them rule on each situation. And then guess what happens? You're going to court again. So this is just the way we're going to live for a little while. I talk to coaches same way you do, and they're frustrated, they're exhausted. They're not asking anybody to feel sorry for them.
They're just saying, like, I appreciate the insight, because they're like, just listen, man. Like, it's the job description now ain't even what it was 2 years ago, and they're not even looking for sympathy. But you can still explain like how tough the situation is, and we can put it into the context. That's all.
Right. Two things can be true. These guys get paid an incredible amount of money to do a job, but it has always been a hard job, and now it's harder than ever. It's always been a demanding job, and now it's more demanding than ever. And I thought Brad Underwood's clip from last week that we talked about was perfect. He said, it's not fun. This is not fun. I've heard from other coaches who say the job's not fun anymore. The paycheck's great. I love the practices, but I don't like the rest of the stuff, man. This is not what I thought this is not what I thought my job was. So when I talk to coaches and even other people in the industry, they say two things largely. The NCAA had decades to work on this and get out in front of it and try to come up with a system that was more fair for the student athletes, but they kept giving nothing. And then student athlete empowerment became a thing. And now here we are in this very complicated space. So this is the NCAA's fault, and the NCAA is getting what it deserves, I guess. But what they also say, and I, on some level, agree with this, that this model we have right now is not sustainable. Again, both things can be true. Student athletes deserve to capitalize in any way that any other normal student would be allowed to capitalize. And if that means getting 6 figures or even 7 figures name, image, and likeness rights, then congratulations. But the way the system is operating now, with agents literally calling other schools and saying, I represent a player at school A. He is interested in coming to your school, but it would take this, and this. Can you get that done? Like, I don't know if that is sustainable. And so Dan Wolken, my friend at USA Today, wrote a column about this as well. And one of the points he's made is a point I've made for a while, and something he and I have talked about extensively over the years. And that's that the first step in, quote, fixing this, if you think it's an actual problem, and not everybody does, but if you do, is you've got to acknowledge that this is professional sports. It starts there. The clinging to amateurism, as long as you're doing that and allowing the boosters to just pay everybody however they want, it is going to be complicated and frustrating and exhausting for everybody involved. And there'll be some nightmare stories that emerge. So you've got to let go of that and acknowledge that this is professional sports. And as Dan wrote, make the student athletes employees, cut them in on the massive amount of revenue being raked in by football and basketball, collectively bargain the terms of engagement, and then sign athletes to enforceable contracts. That is the end game here. That's where we have to get to. Now, who's smart enough to lead us there? I don't know. The NCAA is, operating with a lame duck president right now. How we get there, I'm not sure. but that is ultimately where we have to get. And until we get there, this is the world we're living in right now.
As the story detailed, I listed, I don't know, 8 players, 8 transfers. I could have given you 10 more. That their recruitments is also kind of the driving force behind the column, just to kind of explain how it's working with so many of these transfers. Not every single one, but plenty of like what are considered like, top 25 to 30 guys. What's happening is they've gone into the portal, and be it an agent, a parent, some sort of representative is going to other schools, or when they're contacted saying, yes, I want to be clear in how I'm framing this. The fit for the player at the school is a significant part of the discussion. The academics is still, as I talked with a few coaches, because I wanted to be like, some coaches are completely like, man, like the school part of this just isn't even a fact. A couple coaches are like that, but a lot aren't like that. A lot are like, no, like, when we talk to a player and or the parents, like they're still wanting to know, like the actual school part of this is still part of it. But the clincher, if you will, or as one coach put it to me, the tiebreaker is, of course, the money. And you have situations where agents for these players are going to schools, and it's, again, this isn't even illegal. It's not even tawdry. Like, it's not illegal, but it's still the way that the system has worked for decades and decades still has people's instincts to flinch at it, where a representative will say, listen, I mean, there's a player right now that is considered a top 10 to 15 transfer. And that player's agent has gone to schools and said, we want to talk about fit, but also when it gets down to it, my player is worth more than Nigel Pack. He's a better player than Nigel Pack was. Nigel Pack screwed up for a lot of guys in this, because listen, all good luck to Nigel Pack. I hope he's awesome at Miami. And in fact, it would be amazing if he was great, even better than he was at Kansas State. But I haven't talked to one person who believes Nigel Pack is worth $400,000 in terms of his name, image, and likeness. I don't happen to believe he's worth $400,000. The only one that might is John Ruiz. He's a billionaire. He can do whatever the hell he wants with his own money. But it ties back to this one particular player, in that some schools that wanted to get involved said, we're not going to align ourselves. Again, the schools are not paying the players. It's the third party. It's the boosters, or it's the companies. But the way this works is you have a program or a NIL collective connected to these people, and you need to make sure it's communicated that, you're helping foster that relationship, which, by the way, is against the rules. That is still not legal at the NCAA level. Coaches actually now, I'm not saying it doesn't happen. Of course it happens. With some, it doesn't, apparently. Some coaches swear to me they are not doing it. And I even checked in on the Miami thing, and Larinaga apparently, like, he doesn't even talk to this billionaire, and has not been satisfied with how this has all gone down. That being said, he did get the talent there. He also got a great transfer, Norchad Omier. So anyway,
if I was the coach at Miami, John Ruiz would be my best friend.
That's not how that's going down with Larinaga.
I know, but if I were the coach at Miami, I would hand him a recruiting list and say, I want this guy, this guy, this guy, and this guy. Go see if you can make it happen.
I'll get to that point in just one second here. But that being said, what you have in the portal, again, what I wrote in the column, Isaiah Wong purely did publicly what is happening behind the scenes, and is, to a heavy extent, it's done in college football. It's done in men's basketball. We are shopping our player. Let us know how much you can make in NIL money. And this has like these trickle-down effects where these guys who are like the 7th, 8th guy on the depth chart at mid-majors, like, they're going into the portal and they're asking, like, what is my NIL opportunity? And like, a couple coaches have said, like, you don't want to sound like a jerk, but you have none.
Right.
You averaged like 4 points on a team that was in a mid-major league that didn't go to the tournament. Like, young man, I'd love to see if we might be able to mix you into you have zero value in your name, image, and likeness. And there's nothing wrong with that, by the way. That's also the market at play. Not everyone's going to get paid, but because you have stories like Isaiah Wong that goes mainstream, Nigel Pack goes mainstream, it's going to have this feeling where these other guys, where does that line stop from when you're good enough to actually receive money for your name, image, and likeness, and where you're a jag, you're another guy, you don't carry any value right now because it hasn't been earned there. It's been a wild time. One quick text I got from a coach, a power conference coach. He said, after the story went up, he said, We should all just stop pretending that this isn't open market recruiting. This stuff has nothing to do with the value of these kids' name, image, and likenesses. This is just paid recruiting. And if everyone was good with that, let's just call it that. I mean, in many ways, that is what's happening. At least,
of course, that's what's happening. I mean, you say, is Nigel Pack's name, image, and likeness really worth $400,000? Of course, it's not. He has 4,800 followers on Twitter. If he's worth 400,000, I'm worth 400 million. All right. Of course, his name, image, and likeness rights are not worth that. But a billionaire decided, I want that guy to play point guard for my favorite school. And so this is what I'm going to offer him to do it. And now we got the deal done. And so you hear, like in this case, Kansas State fans would be upset. Like, how are we supposed to compete with that? I find you a billionaire booster who's willing to throw around money like that, would be the obvious answer. But again, I keep going back to the coaching ranks. You brought up Eric Musselman earlier. A great example here. He was an unbelievable coach at Nevada. But when Arkansas decided they wanted him, everybody understood Nevada can't keep him. And everybody's fine with that. And so when a player at the same level gets bigger opportunities, I'm not going to have a problem with them taking advantage of those opportunities. And, to circle back to, is Nigel Pack worth it? If somebody decides he is, then he is. It's not for name, image, and likeness. That's how they're getting it done. It is just for come play at my school. Think of this. Remember when Greg Marshall got that massive contract at Wichita State? And it was like, were they still in the Missouri Valley Conference at the time? But it was like, is a Missouri Valley coach really worth $3 million a year? If some billionaire booster decides that's what I want to pay him to be here, then absolutely. How is that any different than what just happened with Nigel Pack? It's not. A billionaire booster decided this. I don't care what Nigel Pack's actual worth is to somebody else. I want to make sure he plays basketball here. This is how much money it's going to cost to make it happen. Deal done.
Agreed. We don't have, listen, we're not going to ever do this. We could do 5 hours on it because there's so many angles on this. But to your point, you said before, this is going to happen. This is happening. And I actually wonder if it might eventually get snuffed out and is no longer legal in a year's time, 2 years time, 4 years time. And how you stop it, I don't know. But you just mentioned, if I was a head coach and I had a relationship, I want a relationship with a billionaire. All right, here's my list. Go find these guys. That is happening with some of these schools, these power conference schools, where there are these NIL collectives, okay, which is basically just pulling a bunch of money and saying, here's how much money we can disperse amongst the program, the team, the athletic department, whatever, right? And I mean, there's one school, at least one school that I was told about in the past 48 hours where they are going to hire, at least they plan to hire, a full-time person at this school whose job it will be explicitly to scout, recruit, and bring guys in from the transfer. It will be their job. Like, here's our collective. I'm the representation, third party for the University of so-and-so and so-and-so. And we want you to come here and here's what we can do. Like, it will be someone who basically is paid in essence to pilfer talent off the transfer portal market. So that's a thing that obviously coaches have a huge issue with. Oh, by the way, coaches run players off. This goes on both sides of the coin. Whether that can actually be sustainable or not, I don't know. How you track and stop it, I also don't know. But that's another thing I didn't even get into the column, Parrish, where coaches got a huge issue with this idea of these like third-party people with these NIL collectives just being the ones that are they're headhunting, basically. And that is looked at as the model going forward. I would imagine that'll be one of the bigger topics that's addressed behind the scenes in the next few months at the NCAA level.
Yeah, if I were a college coach, the other thing I would do, to your point, and then we'll move on, I'd hire a general manager, somebody who is a de facto general manager,
yes,
who is dealing with all my boosters and figuring out what money is available and who is, to whatever extent they're allowed to be. And maybe this is where rule changes come in. But you have somebody who can deal with a lot of this stuff coaches don't want to deal with. Again, this is professional sports. We can stop lying to each other, and it should be treated as such. And if every professional sports franchise has a general manager or a president of baseball operations or whatever, well, then we're going to get to a point where college football programs and college basketball programs need them just the same.